And a hearty welcome to everyone to the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Tyler Yonke, episode 210. Today's show, look, the season's winding down, but we're going to break down stages 14 to 16 of the Vuelta a España. Chris Froome, what's his status? What's it look for 2021? Some 7 successful habits of a Masters racer. We'll talk about that and mock a little bit of it. Retirements and transfer news. The women get a race in the Vuelta and finish out their season as well. And Dylan Groenewegen, he gets penalized, but does Patrick Levere get justice? All coming up. Like I said, episode 210. This is Tyler Yonke, the Between Two Wheels podcast, and thanks for joining us. Winding down our season. Hope you're getting some time out of the, I went and did a ride midweek. Great weather out here in Northern California, and it's getting colder, and it's supposed to be pretty chilly coming up for the weekend. So, look, it's first part of November. I mean, what do you expect? Can't be summer all year round, right? But, hey, everyone, thanks for joining us. If you're joining us on the live YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, go ahead and make any comments. We'll be able to join those in as well. Okay, so last we checked out on the Vuelta, it was stage 13, the individual time trial. The Roglic stomped his way to a victory. Once again, VUELTA, the American for CCC, who needs a contract, by the way, for next year, 24-year-old, missed out the stage win by 1 second. Mark Tucker, good to see you. Mark, we're going to do a show at some point about the upcoming schedule and probably talk to you again about your racing out in Florida. So we'll keep that in mind. So anyway, the Vuelta went off. VUELTA misses his stage win by 1 second. I think it was his bike change. You look at the Roglic bike change, flawless, very good. Matter of fact, the push off was like bobsledding. Whereas VUELTA had a little trouble. That 1 second could have cost him there. So that's too bad for him. It would have been something amazing. Does Roglic need the extra win in his Palmers? Probably not. Stage 14. So all this week, Wednesday, Thursday. So the Tuesday was the time trial. So Wednesday, Thursday, today, Friday, some lumpy stuff, some climbs in there. You're looking for breakaways to get away, or at least a reduced field sprint type of situation. But you're not really looking for much out of the GC race, shake up. But it's probably going to come down to, it's now going to come down to tomorrow. But I still thought there was some interesting stuff that took place. So stage 14, 200 plus kilometers. This was a nasty weather day as well. Actually, this one wasn't quite as bad, but long rolling day, lumpy. Should be in a field sprint or a break, and that's exactly what it was. We got the green light from Mike Woods, Tim Wellens, Mark Soler, 2 other riders. I'm trying to remember their names, but it was a Sunweb guy in there. Anyway, the last bit of the road was real twisty, kind of like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and it set itself up. But coming into the finish, you had a little bit of a separation. I've seen this with Mike Woods too many times. Comes over the top of a climb. We've had this with Liège-Bastogne-Liège the last several years. When he gets off, and he just doesn't quite connect, and then he doesn't descend as well as the others. And that happened. You had 2 guys, two going up the road, Soler and another guy up there, and then Tim Wellens ends up bridging up to them. And so then those 3 are flying up the road. It was the quick step guy, I believe, was up there with them, and they're flying up the road. So then the other 2 and Mike Woods had to basically bring them back, and they're working really hard to do so. And that might play itself in there because the last 1K up the climb was a little bit twisty, a little bit of climby. They catch him right at the bottom of the climb. Mike Woods goes to the front, maybe a little bit too early, but it looked like Tim Wellens maybe was the only one that really knew the route. He ends up coming around the corner, and the finish was like you take a hard left, boom, the finish line's right there. So it was really odd. He took the inside corner, nipped Mike Woods, and so Tim Wellens gets his win. Mike Woods, another second place. Interesting, so Mark Soler is up the road again. His team is obviously, he's not in GC contention. Enric Mas is a little bit not quite in contention as much as he was before because he lost a bunch of time in the time trial. So maybe it's okay getting him up the road, trying to get a stage win. I think that's perfectly fine. It was interesting, though, using the same concept of Mark Soler and Valverde up the road not being able to help their team leader in the mountains the next few days is Mike Woods. He's putting a lot of effort in there. Now, this was Wednesday, so, Carthy's going to need him tomorrow. And so we'll see how Mike Woods is. Is he going to be a little bit depleted from the effort? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Hugh Carthy's obviously strongly in third place. So if you see Mike Woods kind of bowing out and not being able to stay up there when Carthy needs the help, maybe you point back to stage 14 and say, hey, did you really need to do that? But once again, he narrowly missed the win, so no GC changes there. Stage 15, Puebla de Mas to Puebla de Sanabria. Lumpy once again, could be for their date breakaway. A long day out in the saddle. I think those guys ended up with the neutral zone like 240 kilometers or so. I think it was just riddled with Cat 3 climbs and long day, wet. So, that's kind of a day that you got to make sure you're fueling your your GC rider, keeping him safe and warm. No big wrecks for there. I did see that coming to the finish line that the results-wise, Chris Froome wasn't in there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit and give you a little update on him. As it was, the teams are all leading out for the finish, and you had Jasper Phillipson, a young guy from UAE. I think he had been in with Action Berman before. He wins, quite a nice little sprint win for him. I think they had already got rid of Bennett, so he wasn't really in the mix. And very emotional. I mean, that guy was super, super happy, as if he had just won a stage of a Grand Tour. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. But his team was super excited, too. They were all around him. I haven't really seen that kind of excitement and celebration from a rider and a team, that big of a team that expects results. So it was really pretty cool. His guys are like, oh, we were really happy. We're happy for you. I trusted you. So it was good to see Phillipson get the win. And then today's stage 16, Salamanca to Ciudad Rodrigo, Cat 2 and a Cat 1, but the Cat 1 came about 40K to the finish with still some up and down. You had a breakaway going on there, and you had Robert Stannard and Remy Cavagna, kind of the two main protagonists in there, and they ended up shelling everyone else out of that break going up to Cat 1. It was just those two going over the top. It had like a 5-minute lead going into this, but Ineos starts putting the hammer down and brings that down to, around a minute 20 or so over the top. And then those two guys are chasing, they're riding hard. Robert Stannard, Australian, I believe, for Mitchelton Scott, Remy Cavagna, Italian for Daytona Quickstep. You might remember him from winning a stage here in Tour of California. Horrible job descending. It was all over the news. And then he goes out, does that La Provence race early on in the year that up to last stage or two, up to on Mont Ventoux that Nairo Quintana ended up winning the stage race. And he had a breakaway going into that, and he was descending much better. So you could see at least that he's starting to learn a little bit from his mistakes. Today, once again, had a chance. He gets rid of Stannard at one point, not related to Ian Stannard, by the way, and we'll talk about him a little bit too. So Robert Stannard gets distance, and last 20K, they're starting to bring those two down. And then Remy Cavagna is out there all by himself, and he has a strong motor. So he's going full bore. He can put it on for time trials as well. But it's just a little bit too much. Even though it's a big reduced group in the back, you got all these non-sprinters, and you got the GC guys going there. And so sometimes it's easier to stay away because there's really not a concerted effort. Like, we're going to bring. But Mitchell and Scott had Dion Smith in there, movie star. They were pulling for, I guess, Valverde. UAE was doing a little mix for Rui Costa. And in the end, you catch Cavagna in the last 2K, and then a FDJ rider takes off, and they close that down as well. But then you have the sprint, and the sprint was interesting because, like I said, it's not no lead-out trains. It's a bunch of ragtag GC guys going for it, and it looked worse than some of these pro riders that are getting relegated. You got zigzag. Rui Costa, dude, take a straight line. Maybe you win this thing. He's zigzagging all over the road. Valverde is up the left-hand side. He's sprinting on his hoods. He just sits up with like 25 meters or so to go, which kind of throws everything in the mix. On the right-hand side, you had Magnus Cort Nilsson of EF shooting up there. Dion Smith never really got himself in the right position. In the end, EF gets their third stage win of the Vuelta. Magnus Cort Nilsson posts up nicely for it, a little bit after the line, as he should. But right behind, the most interesting part is Roglic gets a bike throw for second place over Rui Costa and Valverde and Carapaz and all the rest. And he gets a 6-second time bonus. So what's interesting is 10 seconds was what he lost up the Angliru, and he gets over half of that back today just by finishing well on the sprint. So let's just take a little bit of breakdown that. So Roglic, he got the 6-second time bonus. Like I said, he lost 10 seconds on the Angliru. He lost 43 seconds to Carapaz on stage 6, which was the bad weather and the rain jacket day. So now he's up by 45 seconds on the GC because he got from 39 to 45. He would have to really fall apart and have another like rain jacket type of day. Now, look, he could lose time, and with the stage, the bonus seconds for Carapaz, if he wins the stage, and then he gets another, so that'd be 10 seconds. Let's say that Roglic just falls apart. Carapaz gets a stage win. Now he's got to beat him by 35 seconds. Well, like I said, the one day you saw him losing some time was 43 seconds, and that was a really bad day. He didn't have any teammates around him. They had all, just dumped themselves out to help him even get up to the climb itself. So if he has another incident like that, mechanical type of thing, team managers are taking a piss in the car again, like they did in the Vuelta and the Giro, possibly. So I don't see that being too much of a big issue. Now let's take the EF real quick. 3 stage wins at the Vuelta, and they're Grand Tours of the year. Denny Martinez wins at the Tour de France. Quicado and Guerrero in the Giro. They had Woods, Magnus, Court Nelson, and Carthy have all won here in the Vuelta with, a second place, 2 second places by Woods. I think Carthy's been really close up there several times as well. And obviously Carthy's in 3rd overall in GC. That's very impressive. Ineos, no wins at the Vuelta. Okay. Jumbo, no wins at the Giro. I don't think Sunweb has won anything here at the Vuelta as well. So I don't know if there are any other teams with a win in all 3 Grand Tours. That's something we can take a look at and kind of if one of you guys happens to know, chime in on that. So maybe one of the most successful as far as, stage wins for Grand Tours, spreading it out this year. And if they end up getting a podium spot here with Hugh Carthy, that will be really play into kind of their, look, last year I was saying that the best Grand Tour team of the year was Jumbo. They had, Roglic is 3rd at the Giro. Kreuziger was 3rd at the Tour de France, and then he wins the Giro. So the Vuelta, Roglic does. So they obviously, they were podium on all of those and had a bunch of stage wins. Sepp wins at the Vuelta stage, as does Roglic, and they had a really good season with that. Ineos destroyed the Giro. I say destroyed, even though it was a close race. They had a ton of stage wins. Ghana's up and down. I mean, they had a real good Giro. So good for them, which was interesting because their main guy gets taken out, and then they were expected to do well at the Tour. Do you know that Bernal rides for them? Who even remembers that anymore? All right, upcoming stages. Stage 17 tomorrow. That's going to be the one to Alta de la Calvitia. 176 kilometers, a Cat 1, a 3, a 3, a 3, a 2, and then a Cat 1 finish. That will be the ride, unless there's, going into Madrid, it's not going to be anything. So it'll be a sprint stage. I likely see Bennett there. The GC is going to play interesting because there could be there's so many guys that get in the break now and they're like 45 minutes back. So you may let those go, but those guys may get, if there's a lot of attacking, which there should be. I mean, Carapaz, look, he's won the Giro before, so second place doesn't really mean much. It's for the win or nothing. Same with Hugh Carthy, although Carthy might be in a spot where he's like, I just want to be podium, so he may not be super aggressive. But I expect both of those. Enric Mas, he's going to come from below, quite a ways out, so maybe he's going to take a shot. But I really don't think he's a guy you can let go up the road a little bit. So it's really about the Carapaz and what he can attack and put on to Roglic. And then Roglic has the team to support him. I'll just say real quick, though, Froome, he's last few days up in the mountains there, he was actually able to support Carapaz. He's saying he's enjoying the Tour like he hasn't really, Volta like he's never done before. He's able to do his work. His legs are coming around. He had, 6 months or so, 9 months, I think, totally off the bike. So he's starting to feel a little better. There was a photo or video of this guy running next to him in the time trial. He didn't swap bikes, by the way, for the TT going up the climb, and that thing was steep. If you go look at it, Cycling Weekly, it's this guy riding next to him, and Froome actually has the wherewithal as he's suffering up this, 18% climb in his TT bike. He looks over at the guy and says, basically that he's in Spanish, that impressed because the guy was running alongside him for quite some time. But that's Froome there. He didn't sign on to stage 15. I noticed he wasn't in the results. Evidently, he didn't sign on, and they have a 52-week rolling points system, for the UCI, and he gets deducted points for not from the UCI points for not signing in before the stage. So he's actually at a negative right now for UCI points. Ooh, is that gonna affect his contract going on? I tend to think, look, it's been somewhat. he's a positive, and we'll talk about some of these guys that are retiring, forced retirements. One thing you got to say about Froome, and it may seem a little naive on his part, but he seems super positive. So if you're going through something like what he's going through, he's obviously a hard worker, and you're a super positive guy. I think that only bodes well for you trying to actually come back. I mean, Yoshua Balaki, when he went down and broke his, hip and I don't know if it was femur or whatever else he did there in Tour de France, going into, it was a gap. He, with the Lance going through the field, he never really was anything coming back, and that could happen to riders. Taylor Phinney, kind of same thing. Peter Stetina had some bad injuries, but he was not quite the same rider as Froome, obviously, but I think he came back to his full strength. So it'll be interesting, coming back to leading world tours and grand tours and everything, and especially as his age gets older, I think it's just going to be a little different. But I think he's got the mindset to at least make it interesting for us. I would kind of hope, I don't know. The women, they're doing 3 stages at Madrid there, or the Madrid Challenge, I think they're calling it. And today they had the first one. It was the one by Lorena, and there's nothing. They're going to have like a little highlights package, and then Sunday's race is going to be live, I think. Lorena Wiebes of Team Sunweb won that over Elisa Balsama, Lisa Brennauer, and then in second place, 12 seconds back, so there's just a little bit of a gap there. But Alexis Ryan of Canyon SRAM, American, in 7th place. So we'll keep our eye on that. I don't know if the 3 stages or if they're combined as on time, or if they're more like just 3, like Omnium type of thing. I'm not sure. I imagine it's a time issue. So I think there's a time trial mixed in there, which would make sense. Some predictions here. I think you're going to end up seeing just the top overall as it is. Roglic, Carapaz, and Carthy. I've seen, Carthy has put some time on Carapaz, dropping him on Angliru at stage 6 as well. He put a little bit of distance on him when he also was putting it on. But it needs to be super steep for Carapaz to get dropped by Carthy. I think that's kind of how it is. And I don't think these stages, these last mountains, are quite like what we've seen before. So I tend to think it's going to be right up the same. Guillaume Martin, he's got the KOM jersey. It's been kind of fun to watch him. He's been really aggressive, and it's nice to see an actual climber get the climber's jersey. Green jersey is going to be done by Roglic, and I would say if Bennett's still in the race, he'll win the last stage. Okay, so there's some news out about some forced retirements and some transfer news. Johan Alfredo, Wanty Group Gobert, I don't know what they're called, Circus Wanty or something now. He's being forced into retirement. He said he's got a lot of depression. And he's like, I knew what it was as a cyclist, but I don't really know what I am as just a person. Okay, so look, judging yourself on how you ride is somewhat a bad way to go through life too, right? It's difficult. I think it's something cyclists have to try to get through and around is your well-being or your worth as a cyclist and your results and how you're training and everything. You got to sometimes step back from that and realize you've got a job, you have something else. We're not pros, but even pros, they've got you can't. Oh, I had a bad result. I mean, that's a tough thing to go through. Always trying to determine yourself on your last result. And so there's different mindsets to get through. Now this person is no longer even racing, and he says he used to 30 hours a week on the bike. It's easy to go to sleep. Now he's up at 3:00 in the morning, bored, can't go to sleep because he's not tired enough. Yikes, a little rough there. Ian Stannard, he's got rheumatoid arthritis. I guess he was trying to work through this and hoping he had some solutions. So he's being forced to retire as well. He's won some classics there with Ineos. Transfer market, Joey Roscoff is going to Raleigh. Now, Raleigh's really pushed themselves up. He was a CCC, and Raleigh's been really pushing themselves up, getting more and more in the continental stuff. So I don't see that that's such a down play for him going down further. Trek's women's team, maybe we'll take a little look about who they announced their lineup for the next season. And Taylor Wiles, I think she's staying on there for going to be well into the next 2 years. Lizzie Dynan, Elisa Borghini, Eleanor Backstedt, that's Magnus Backstedt's daughter, Lucinda Brand, Audrey Corden-Raga, Amalia Diedrichsen, Loretta Hansen, Chloe Hoskins from Australia. Let me see, they have 2 Americans on here. Taylor Wiles, Ruth Widner, it's good to see her, Trixie Warwick, Ellen Van Dyke, staying with them. Solid group there for the women. And then talk about some riders that are going to be out of contract for this year and kind of a concern about some of these guys. And it's interesting to see who is going to be in and who is going to be out as far as who's, some famous people here. So let's take a look here. This is from Cycling News. So the three main guys that show up here, Nizzolo, Cavendish, and Aru. And remember, Wiggins had said earlier that Cavendish should be just offered a contract no matter what, because he's him. So we'll start with Fabio Aru. Fabio Aru, I mean, he dropped out of the Tour. The team was scathing in their remarks about him mentally and all these things. This guy's won the Giro. He came out and same time as Joe Dombrowski, and you're kind of like, hey, Joe's a decent rider. He's not had the accolades and the palmares that Fabio Aru has, but he's won stages at the Tour. But he's just he had that iliac surgery with fixing his leg, and also Dombrowski. So maybe it's something that came out that year for those guys. I don't know. So he hadn't had a contract, and some speculation about where he's going to go. But I don't think his Tour de France little escapade with the team and dropping out when they could have used his help was much thing. Mark Cavendish, I don't know where he's going to go. He hasn't really done much at all. He got in a few breaks early, Brabantis Peel maybe it was the race there, or Brinkbank, one of those where he was getting the breakaway on a few races, but nothing really that he was able to correlate into anything. Will Barta, it's good to have him on the same list. This is a 24-year-old, just gets 1 second off of winning a stage at the Vuelta. Impressive too, that time trial. So that flat, got to power your way, and then the climb. Good to see him, former action rider. Victor Campenaerts, the dude's strange, and you remember he had his, wanted a date thing on his jersey a few years ago. Then he was in the hyperbaric chamber all season over COVID. Didn't quite work out for him at Worlds, but with NTT possibly folding, although they're saying they're like 60% chance. Doug Ryder, their manager there, said that they might have one. Look, there's also a movie on, I think it's called The Dream. It's on YouTube, and it's all about NTT and Quebeca, kind of their development, and it's pretty well done. It's a little boring in parts, but it really goes into their whole charity and talks with Ben King. Him winning 2 stages of the Vuelta a few years ago was kind of a big deal for them. Sergio Henao, UAE, he's got no place to go as well. Matthew Gibson, didn't really know much about him. He was with Burgos, BH. Look, you're already at a continental level team, and you're not getting a contract. That's probably not showing good signs. More CCC fallout. Jakub Murakatso, I don't know, Murakso, Polish rider, I imagine, and that's probably his greatest claim of getting on that team too, because it's a Polish team. Roman Kortzinger, another NTT fallout for him. Former really good rider, but he's getting older there. He's 34, so what's the prospects? I mean, everyone's younger coming in now. Robert Power. He's been in some breaks here at the Vuelta. By the way, if I was him, I'd just go by the nickname Max. That's one of the names that Homer Simpson wanted to be changed to, Max Power. And I think I would just call myself Max if I was Robert Power. I think that's his parents did a disservice by calling him Robert. Giacomo Nizzolo, I think he won an NTT. I think he won the stage early on in the Tour Down Under this year. He was looking to come through pretty well, but just hasn't really had much in the way of anything else for his season. So that's a bunch of riders that we have that are kind of missing out in some spots that we don't have for those riders. I thought we'd also go over here. I saw this interesting article on Velo News. It was key features to 7 healthy habits of a successful Masters racer. And I also thought it was there were some funny parts in there. So maybe we'll just take a look at this, and we can talk about some of these things. Since I am a Masters racer and I do some healthy things, so some of you guys out there, you might want to take note of this. And so I asked some different riders, and here's a breakdown of these key things that all these successful Masters racers do, and you see if you do any of these. They ride in the morning. I don't, so maybe I'm not successful for that. They follow a training plan using a power meter. Okay, well, I do not really follow a training plan anymore. I used to, maybe when I was more successful, I do use a power meter. They rest when rest is needed. That is one thing I do get plenty of, is rest. They win in the kitchen. Well, my wife takes care of the kitchen, and she is a winner, so I guess I'm doing that. They recover well. Yeah, I guess so. But see, that falls into rest when it's needed. They are year-round athletes. Am I? They enjoy training, working hard, and setting goals. Okay, some of that. But what I thought was interesting about this, you can read through those different coaches. They have, maybe this is why I think this is a hoax. They have Phil Guyman on there. They focus on the big picture and don't obsess over the small stuff. First of all, he's not a Masters racer. Second of all, what? That's so untrue. Have you talked to any of these Pete's riders, Mark Tucker, myself? We focus on the big picture and don't obsess over the small stuff. That's bullshit. We obsess over ridiculous things. The only ones that complain on races are the Masters racers. It's little stuff. Little stuff is the big picture for Masters racers. Colby Pierce, they cross-train. Well, okay, maybe we're talking about successful. Once again, successful Masters racers totally do cross-train. I don't. Although I used to play a lot of volleyball when I was coaching the girls and my son's volleyball teams. That really does help. But lately I've just been building chicken coops in my garage. So Adam Meyerson says they do intervals. Now there's key for me. I do, that's all I do unless I do a group ride. It's all interval training over and over. And if I did 3 intervals as a pro, says Meyerson, I only did 2 as a master. Never leave it all out there and during a road training. Ride home, feeling good, save the energy for your family. I don't know. Frank Overton, they win in the kitchen. That's probably true. Final thoughts, keep it in perspective. That is not something that a good Masters racer does, is to keep it in perspective. I don't believe that's anything that they have the ability to do. Maybe you can chime in on what your successful habits are. Maybe I'll come up to one to do what's an unsuccessful Masters racer's routine, and some of you guys can help me on that. Some winners and losers. First of all, EF Education. First, I just did a little brief thing with them, and they're racing, once again, stellar. Mike Woods, you're going to Israel. But you've really done a good job for that team for the Vuelta. Once again, should have been in the Tour. Unbelievable that Jonathan Vaughters and these guys think that TJ Van Garderen should have been at the Tour instead of Woods. Ridiculous. I think there was a chance that he could have got a stage win at the Tour as well. This is just the kind of rider he is. Although it sounded like to me it was between him or Nelson Palace. That's have them both in there. Nelson's the future as well, hopefully. And the fans, I think the fans are got a benefit of this condensed season. It's been a bit much trying to follow along and keep track of everything, but it's been really good. Magnus Cort Nielsen, winner today, is also a COVID-19 survivor. He said he had COVID, and he only had back on training before the Vuelta for 3 weeks, he said. And he's also a Grand Tour stage winner. Is this their first COVID survivor / Grand Tour stage winner? I know Gaviria had it, but I don't think he won a stage of any of the Grand Tours. So we could have our first COVID-19 survivor / winner. And I'm saying because Philip Ogana just got diagnosed with, rest in peace, Philip. It was nice knowing you, but he just got diagnosed with COVID. So likely him surviving are very slim. And, you had a good season. You had a good 2020. It was nice knowing you. We enjoyed it. But he didn't have COVID and then race and win a grand stage, so a tour stage. So there you have it. Lastly, we'll talk about Groenewegen. He's facing a 9-month ban for his Jakobsen crash at the Tour of Poland. Once again, did Patrick Lefevre, did he end up getting justice out of this? I don't know. The UCI, let's see if we can maybe put this up on the screen as well. We can read this one along together. Groenewegen, I think it was an independent panel, which is interesting as well. Like, maybe they should have that. There's this gentleman, a bad side story, a guy that died, police shooting several years ago, I think out in Detroit, go figure. And his dad's a pilot, and he's like, it was interesting. The police cleared it. It was it happened in front of the family house, and he's like, so we saw what happened. It wasn't a justified shooting, according to him. But the police investigated themselves, and he's like, it seems odd, when we have a plane wreck, the NTSB comes in. It's not the, Alaska Airlines goes down. They don't investigate it themselves. It's an independent board. So this is kind of happening, it sounds like, with the UCI, which might be good, but what's that board made up of? I'm assuming these are people that know what they're talking about. UCI yet to confirm the punishment, which was reportedly determined by an independent committee. I don't know that I have a problem with that. Problem was this kind of wreck, and look, it was just too much, I guess, for them not to make a big deal about it and try to do it. But 9 months, Dylan Groenewegen reportedly received a 9-month ban for cycling role in his Deceuninck Quick-Step sprinter Fabio Jakobsen's crash on stage 1 of the Tour of Poland. According to reports, an independent arbitration committee determined the ban, which will be imposed retroactively from August and run through May 6, 2021. Yikes. So he's going to miss out on the beginning part of the season. On the day of the crash, the UCI stated that the incident had been referred to the disciplinary committee, though the process now looks to have been outsourced. Back in August, the UCI released a statement condemning Groenewegen, who dangerously deviated from his line. Yeah, he did. It caused a pileup. Who's investigating the UCI for the barriers and how that last stage finish? You know, we talked about it before. That there's no way a rider should go into the barriers, even though it's at full speed, and just disintegrate them, end up in a railroad track, and having, you know, gendarmes, I guess they're not, I don't know what they're called in Poland, but the police service, everyone out there trying to save these people's lives. That's too much. Let's see what this guy says. Richard Diaz, that's too much. The guy had gone through enough. I believe you're talking about Groenewegen, and I believe you are correct. I think his punishment, in a sense, has been the effects he's felt from the social media. Patrick Levere saying he's a criminal. We've seen over and over since that incident multiple sprinting violations. You know, Sagan at the Tour, Bennett just recently at the Vuelta. Bennett's was nothing really in comparison, but it was the horrific crash. But for leaning into the barrier and the barriers disintegrating like that, this would never have been an issue that it has been ripped up to be. So I think that's a bit over the top, and they're obviously using him as a scapegoat in a sense. And it once again, it pushes any of the liability to the. I haven't heard anything about the organizers. Richard Diaz says yes, he was talking about Groenewegen. I agree. Hasn't heard anything about this to the organizers. Haven't heard any repercussions to this for the UCI itself. I'm putting it all on Groenewegen, and that's where we're at. So, all right, everybody, 2 stages left. One real good one, the Vuelta a España, stage 17 tomorrow. Remember, it's cut down to 18 stages since we don't have. They started a little late, so I'm pretty thrilled about this. I think it's going to be a barn burner tomorrow. Maybe we'll do a recap on Sunday, kind of see how everything goes. Other than that, everyone, enjoy the winter. It's coming for you.